We are here with Janet Chow.
Yes.
And she plays Kim in Flavors.
Well, I grew up very, in the way that he thinks Asian people grew up, and I actually did grow up that way, like very academic. My parents, very, super strict. Even if I wanted to rebel, it would have been very difficult just because there was a lot of, I don't know, I feel like there was a lot of something like guilt would be attached to the rebellion, because after I would sneak out of the house, I'd feel really bad. I've done that before, and I felt really bad afterward, because they were really worried about me, and a lot of pressure to do well for your future. A lot of pressure. It's very cultural. Yeah. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and I grew up in an very homogenous community. It was an all-white community, and I was the one of very few other culture people there. And I didn't really feel the difference until I invited someone over to my house, and your house smells different because what you cook is different. There are certain things in your house that aren't in other people's homes. And I grew up thinking every Chinese family in America is like mine, because you don't really have a comparison. So you're everybody's parents, anybody who has Chinese parents grow up in a very strict household, really emphasize academics. And then I went to LA for college. I went to USC, and on the West Coast there's a huge Asian population, and that is definitely not the case. You learn that there are different flavors in Asian American culture, and so I think Kim is actually she doesn't subvert any sort of stereotype. She just is another, she's a party girl. And so I think I didn't think of Asian Americans being that way until I went to USC. And then you're oh, these people are crazy. But I think growing up the way that I did is the way that Michael, the writer, thought Asian families and Asian children in America grow up. But then there's also a huge other portion in San Francisco, Los Angeles, I don't know, that are not that way. I connect to Kim because she's loud and she's just does whatever, which I think is the way that I am. I wouldn't necessarily maybe do what she does, but I have no problem in not keeping my mouth shut. I think ultimately, yeah. I don't think of Kim as a anti-stereotype or a stereotype. I really don't. I think she's just a part, someone who's very vivacious and lives her life the way that she wants to. But I understand in writing her part, it subverts what you would think of as a model Asian American citizen.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, growing up, and I know you mentioned something about having people over and things were different in your household. Have you often been stereotyped?
The funny thing is, growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, when there are not a lot of Asian Americans, there's naturally no stereotype for me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't know what my stereotype was. So, and then when I moved to LA and went to college here, I was oh, these are my stereotypes. Okay, well, I guess it does make sense. But growing up, I wasn't aware of that. I integrated very well into my high school. I had an excellent high school experience, and no one thought that I should be one way or the other because there wasn't enough people to create that sort of mass opinion of one type of culture or background.
That's
there can only be a stereotype if there's a mass group and you can kind of isolate characteristics from that group that make it particular to that group. Yeah.
Do you find that you are fully represented on television, in TV, and film these days?
No. No is the short answer. Okay, let me think about this. I don't. But at the same time, I do feel like it's a work in progress. I think when you create an initiative where it's like, oh, we have to get X amount of this kind of people in, X amount of this, I think that's also a problem. I think it needs to happen organically, and I think part of it is that I do believe that the Asian American population needs to up their art game. I don't know if you need to publish this, but culturally speaking, this might get me in trouble. I don't know if you should publish, but I'll be very frank then.
Right.
So culturally, I don't think Asian Americans gravitate toward fields and careers in art. I think part of being like a immigrant like group that is like very, very model is that you chase like careers that are, and you are encouraged to go after careers that are very stable, namely medicine, finance, and those are kind of like your options. I mean, maybe it's changed since I've been to high school, but when I was in high school, that was what I was told were my options. And a lot of my peers who have similar backgrounds did end up going into those fields. Most of the people I know who are my age didn't end up outside of Los Angeles. There aren't that many people who like chase after these careers. So I think in order for me to say, you need to put us in, like Hollywood, you need to put us in more films. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say if my like particular background doesn't encourage going into that field. I do feel like if we want to be represented more so in media, then we need to up that and encourage like the children that we raise to go after more artistic, more creative, less stable things. And that's just my opinion, and I will defend it. Many people may disagree with me, but I wasn't encouraged to go down this route, and I know a lot of people with my background were not encouraged.
And what's fascinating about that is that, I know that you come from a world, like in your family, of academics.
Yeah, I do.
And, kind of a high respect for
scholarship and
yes.
and very much like stability. This is not what any of that.
So
yeah.
What's fascinating to me about you is how did you happen to go this route when it's not what you were kind of raised around or encouraged to do?
I think because I had like a deep burning desire to do this, and because I think some people are wired a certain way, and I was wired not to settle, if that makes sense. That applies to like all aspects of my life, and I think many people who are driven are that way. I worked briefly in advertising right out of college, and I worked there for 7 months, and I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do, but I had to do it just to make sure it wasn't what I wanted. I think it's just an innate thing where you're like, you're being told one thing and it goes in one ear and comes out the other. It was the fact that I just wanted to be true to myself, and I had to go after what I wanted. Yeah.
And I love that. That's such a great thing to say, because so often people spend time trying to live for someone else.
Yeah, I think that was a good thing. Like at an earlier age, I knew I couldn't live for other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I could. Many people could say that for sure.
That is great. Now, so tell me, Janet. Now, getting back to Flavors. After watching it and kind of seeing, and some of the jokes are a little, a bit out there.
Yeah.
Do you see this starting conversations? How do you think people are going to receive Flavors?
I think that the show hits. It's very. It presents what we think and what we don't think in a very glaring way. I think some people will react like, that's not true. That's not the way that this is. I can't believe that they would make it this way. Like, let me think about this, how I think people will react to it. I think some people will think it's funny and not really give a second thought to like what it is. I think some people will be, I don't want to say offended, but kind of like turned off, like, why would you represent this person this way? Chris, who plays Andre, Chris, who plays Andre, Chris, who plays Andre, he's a white guy and he's, speaking like black lingo at the end. I don't know if everybody will be receptive to it, but it's like, no, this person can speak however he wants because he just can't. Even if he grew up in Kansas,
right.
Why couldn't he?
Exactly. It's good. And so, and what do you think about projects like this in general, where, just like you said, they do have a possibility of maybe being offensive to some or inciting, but could also start conversations. Where do you think they have like their space in the whole artistic realm of it? Needed?
Yeah.
Stay away? Good? Bad? What are your thoughts?
I think it's extremely needed. I mean, if anything, it's just an inciting factor for people to think. And thinking is always good. I think thought provocation is the best way to like become a progressive society. Because if you just stick to what you know, then I don't think anybody is going to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Jenna, thank you so much.
Yeah,
for being with us
thank
today.
you for having me.